Prithvi Shantirantarikshagam Shantir Dyav Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantish Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapah Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shantif Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shantif Shantireva Shanti Shantirme Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra Sukhina Santu, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhag Bhavet, Sarvastaratu Durgani, Sarvo Bhadrani Pashyato, Sarvas Sadbuddhimapnotu, Sarvas Sarvatra Nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our own hearts. In order to remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Asato ma Satkamaya Tamaso ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravir Mahedhi Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Te Namam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. Today we begin chapter 18. This is the last chapter of the Gita. And we know that each chapter is called a yoga with a different name. So this 18th chapter is known as Sannyasa Yoga. Some books also refer to it as Moksha Sannyasa Yoga. Sannyasa is letting go, giving up, relinquishing. And Moksha Sannyasa Yoga would mean attaining freedom or liberation through the practice of giving up. So let's read the first verse. Arjuna uvacha Sannyasasya mahabaho Tattvamichhami veditum Tyagasya cha rishikesha Prithak keshini shudana. Arjuna said, I desire to know distinctly the true nature of renunciation, sannyasa, or rishikesha, as also of relinquishment, Tyaga, O mighty armed one, O slayer of Keshan. And as most chapters in the Gita do, this begins with a question of Arjuna. There are some chapters of the Gita, there is no question of Arjuna mentioned, but as we proceed through the chapter, we can see that Krishna is answering a specific question, which itself is not often mentioned. But in this chapter, we clearly know what Arjuna is asking here is, what is the distinction between sannyasa and tyaga? Because these are the two terms which Krishna has used lots of times throughout his teaching so far. And there is not really that much difference between the two. Both really mean giving up. Now, specifically when Arjuna asks, what is the difference between the two? And Krishna then describes the next verse. If the two words are put side by side, and if one distinction has to be made, then he says, this is what sannyasa means, this is what tyaga means. But as I said, taken singly, not side by side, each of those two words encompasses the whole meaning. So there is no too great a technicality really between sannyasa and tyaga, unless we identify sannyasa with a specific monastic stage of life. Now, monasticism itself is a big subject, but very quickly I can still very briefly refer to it. Sri Ramakrishna in one place during his conversation said that there are two kinds of yogis. By yogi, the term he was using in the term of spiritual seekers, in the sense of spiritual seeker. So he said there are two kinds of spiritual seekers. Those who are visible or, vyakta yogi, Yeah, probably visible is probably the only. By visible, I don't mean in a visual sense. Those which are okay. The other one is called those which are hidden. So Gupta yogi means the hidden yogi, and this is the opposite of hidden. What would be a good term? Hidden means like it's very obvious in the sense. Okay, let me explain what it means. Now, for instance, when someone, for instance, one of the ways it becomes obvious that someone has accepted this ideal, the spiritual ideal, is if you have special robes and if you carry a different name. Now, clearly, for instance, now, my name, Swami Tyagananda, that's not the name that my parents gave me when I was born. So this name was given when I was ordained a monk. Now, monk or monasticism is very clear just by the vows that you take, the robes that you wear. It's very visible and clear that this is the ideal this person has chosen. Now, that does not mean that those who are not monks don't have a spiritual ideal. In fact, a lot more people who are spiritual seekers have not taken to monasticism. What it means is, but they have the same spiritual ideal before them, but it's hidden. But hidden in the sense they don't externally wear specific robes. They don't have a specific name. So someone, you might be traveling in a train, you might be going in a bus, and the person sitting next to you may not be wearing any special robes. But that person may be a very deep spiritual seeker. You have no way of knowing. And so that's the idea of sannyasa. Now, if you identify sannyasa with only the visible category, someone who is formally taken monastic vows, then it might be easier to distinguish between sannyasa and tyaga. Sannyasa would be those who have taken formal vows of monastic life, and tyaga would be those who are giving up, but internally, but not taken formal vows. But as I said, sannyasa, that would be a very limited meaning to say that's only external formal way. So sannyasa really means inner spirit of letting go of all unnecessary baggage. Taken in that sense, there is no really distinction between sannyasa and tyaga in the words themselves. So here is Arjuna's question. Since you have used both these terms throughout the Gita, sannyasa and tyaga, I want to know what is the difference between them. You might remember, those of you who have read Ramakrishna's conversations, that he often used to say that the central teaching of the Gita is best described by just repeating the word Gita 10 times. Just more than once. So if we say Gita, 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 Gita. So it also means you are saying Gita, but Gita, Gita, Gita. It's also like ta, Gita, Gita, Gita. And then there was some grammatical rule that ta means tyaga. So tagi. So there is. We did not go into the grammatical technicalities here, but it really means tyaga. And so what Ramakrishna would say that if you repeat the word a few times, the word tyaga comes, and that is the central teaching of the Gita. And so it's understandable that as generally, if you go to any book or a talk or a lecture or a thesis, generally the last chapter would be summarizing the essence of whatever has gone before. So expect to find in this chapter the summarizing of all the essential teachings of the Gita that have gone before. And so it would be interesting to kind of pay special attention to this chapter. So here is Arjuna's question. What is the distinction between tyaga and sannyasa? Now, Krishna answers that question in the second verse. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Kamyanam Karmanam Nyasam Sannyasam Kavayo Viduhu sarva karma phala tyagam prahus tyagam vichakshanaha. The Blessed Lord said, sages understand the renouncing of actions that fulfill desires as renunciation, sannyasa, and the learned declare the abandoning of the fruit of all actions as relinquishment or tyaga. So, one way of distinguishing the two would be that if we renounce all actions that fulfill, now the word here, actions that fulfill desires, this is actually a little bit of a technical term. Now, in the Vedas, the central scripture of the Vedantins, there are different kinds of actions enjoined in it. Now, there are certain actions, so certain things that the book says you got to do, they are called kamya. Kamya means if you have a certain desire, you should do this. So there is a class of activities prescribed in the book for, say, if you would like to go to heaven, do these things. If you would like blah, 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 do this. If you want this. So every activity that is prescribed in the text with this prefixed with, if you want this, if you wish this, so if you have a desire for this, then you do this. In other words, if you don't have a desire for it, you don't have to do it. It's not mandatory for everyone. That we know from our own experience that every action has a result. And that in day-to-day life, we generally say, well, this worked, this didn't work. So at least there is results in either success or failure. But every action leads to some kind of a result. And what some actions do is, if you have a desire for this result, do this. And so what the Vedas say is that if you don't have a desire for it, don't do it. But there are certain other kinds of actions which are prescribed in the books to be done on specific occasions. For instance, at the time of some of the sacraments, that after birth, at the time of marriage, at the time of death. So some of these major landmarks in our life, or on certain festive occasions, or on a birthday, and so on, or on certain festival days, certain actions have to be done. So they are called naimittika, that is on a specific days. So some actions to be done only if you have a desire for it, some actions to be done on specific days for specific occasions. Then there are some class of actions that are mentioned in the book called nishiddha. That means it should never be done. And that would obviously include all things that we would classify as bad things, evil things. Don't kill anyone, don't hate anyone, and so on. So those are the other kind of actions. And there's another one class of action which is called nitya, to be done daily. And that would include things such as a daily prayer, a daily inner and external cleanliness, and so on. So here when he says, sages understand the renouncing of action that fulfill desires as renunciation means, if I decide that all the actions meant to fulfill specific desires that are mentioned in the scriptures, if I decide that's not what I'm going to do, I'm going to give up all those actions, then that would be sannyasa. And here a question would be, why should I give up those actions? I mean, why should I give up any action for that matter? And the answer is simple. The answer is this: we don't have to give up all the actions, but giving up all the actions makes sense only if we have a certain worldview. And the worldview is this: if every action is going to yield a result, that result would be either in terms of success or failure of that action, and it's either going to give me either joy or sorrow, because that's generally the case. If things work out the way we want them to, it makes us happy. If they don't work out the way we want it makes us miserable. And essentially, That's taken at the experiential level, that's what our life is. Just all through life, we are kind of shuttling, going back and forth between, well, there are times which we are very happy. We get some good experiences, things work out well, we are happy. Now that state of happiness may continue for some time, but doesn't remain forever. Then some blow comes, something misfires, or something stupid happens, and then we are sad. And luckily, that state of sadness doesn't continue forever, then we are happy again. So all through life, we are going back and forth. And sometimes it feels as if, to some people feel like, well, I'm mostly happy. So if happiness comes, it probably stays for a longer time. And then there are these intervals in which I feel kind of miserable. And some other people have a different experience. They feel, well, I'm miserable most of the time. Occasionally some good news comes. But apart from the differing ratios of these two, some people believe that at the end of the day, you put it all together, it's probably more or less equal, although the perceptions may vary. Whatever be the case, one thing is true, that our life simply goes on shuttling between joy and sorrow. What most of us want, probably why all of us want, is that we just want happiness to be there. We don't want it to be punctuated by sorrow. We just want, can I be happy all the time? What the theory of karma points out is that the more actions I do, the more potential joy and sorrow I'm accumulating. And since it's not possible for me to experience all of that joy and sorrow in this one human life, because well, we know how fragile human life is. Since I cannot exhaust all the karma in this life, what do I do with all this unexperienced? I have done actions, but I have not yet experienced the joy and sorrow apart from it. In order to then experience it, I need to come again. Because in order to experience either joy or sorrow, we need a body or a mind. Without that, you cannot experience anything. And so taking up a body and mind is what is called birth. And so when we speak about rebirth or reincarnation, it simply means we're taking another body. Why am I taking another body? Because all of my joy and sorrow is just waiting for an instrument for which to express itself. Now, if we don't have any problem with this framework of like, well, I don't mind eternally going between the joy and sorrow. I'm cool, it's okay with me. Then you don't need the Gita. You don't need to relinquish anything. You can just take life as it comes, as people say. But if at some point you feel, is that all? All through eternity, just going between joy and sorrow? Isn't there anything more to life? Isn't there anything deeper to life than that? Then what the Gita points out is, yes, it's possible for you to just stop this. Why is it eternal? Because it is circular. A circle that doesn't have a beginning and doesn't have an end. So long as I choose to remain in the circle, I can remain in the circle. But if at any point I say, now I'm tired, I am bored, I want to get out. And the Gita says, yes, you can get out. If you have to get out, you must find a way to somehow stop this vicious cycle of continually experiencing joy and sorrow and producing more karma. And the first step towards that is, okay, all these actions which are prompted by desires, desire for heaven, desire for blah, 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 desire for whatever, I'm going to minimize them. Because if I minimize them, at least I'm slowing down the circle a little bit. At least I'm finding a way to get out of it. And that's why I said this framework has to make sense in order for us to know why should I give up work at all. Because if this framework is not at the back of the mind, it would seem pointless. Why should I? If there is a desire, I should go and fulfill my desire. It just seems so obvious to say that. So the reason why we shouldn't do it is because of this way of thinking. So what Krishna is pointing out here is that sannyasa means giving up all actions prompted by desires. And tyaga means not giving up the action themselves, but giving up the fruits of those actions, the results of those actions. So these are the kind of a subtle distinction that Krishna points out here. There's a long commentary to this in your books. So take a look at it later, and then if you have any questions, we can discuss them next time. Verse 3. Tyajyam doshavadityeke karma prahurmanishinaha yajnadana tapah karma natyajyam iti chapare. So here Krishna is now giving the opinions of different thinkers on this theme. He said, some philosophers declare that all action should be relinquished as being evil, while others say that the work in the form of sacrifice, gift, and austerity should not be relinquished. Now, I just described to you why some philosophers would think that all action is evil. Now, evil in the sense that it yields to these consequences. In order to experience those consequences, I have to keep on going round and round in this circle of relative existence. Samsara in Sanskrit, it's called. It's evil because it traps me. It's evil because it is an obstacle to my freedom. So according to some philosophers, since actions produce results and the results bind me, stop doing actions. So all action should be given up. And Krishna, in an earlier chapter, if you remember, has already kind of addressed this. He said that no one can stay without doing an action even for a moment. Now, a lot of times in English, when we use the word without doing some action or without working, we usually mean by that some kind of a physical activity. Now, it might seem like, well, at least I'm doing some action. I'm moving my hands and I'm speaking. But most of you are just sitting there. So you might think, well, I'm not doing anything. I'm just sitting and listening. Now, the word action or karma that is used in the Gita is used in a much more comprehensive way. So just sitting there and listening is also action, the act of listening. Even if you're just by yourself, even if there's no other person in the room, and you don't have any headphones, you're not listening to music, you're not listening to anything, you might say, well, at least now I'm not doing anything. But even then, the mind, all the thoughts that are going on in your mind, that's action, that's mental activity. And not to speak of all the involuntary activity that's already going on in our mind, which the circulation of blood and the breathing, that's also going on. And of course, the activity of the mind. And that's what Krishna meant when he said that none of us can remain without activity even for a moment. And so in some sense, to say that all action should be relinquished, it just not possible. While others say that the work in the form of sacrifice, now you will remember in the earlier chapter, the closing part of the earlier chapter, 17th chapter, we saw these three, yajna, dana, tapaha, sacrifice or worship, gift or charity, and austerity, that these three things, according to some, should not be relinquished. While from a spiritual standpoint, some thinkers feel that every work that would take me away from my spiritual ideal or away from God in some form, that work should be given up. But every activity that will take me closer towards my spiritual ideal, that should not be given up. And of course, worship, giving up charity, and austerity, these are considered good actions, spiritual activities, and therefore they should not be given up according to some thinkers. Now, Krishna will give his own view on the matter. Verse 4. Nishchayam shrunu me tatra tyage bharata sattama tyago hi purusha vyaghra trividha samprakirtitaha. Hear from me the final truth about this relinquishment. O best of the Bharatas, for relinquishment is truly declared to be of three kinds, O best of men. So Krishna is here saying that here is my view. And in order to elaborate on his view, he first says that there are three kinds of tyaga, three kinds of relinquishment, three kinds of giving up. Unless we know what those three kinds of giving up are, it wouldn't be clear to us whether giving up itself is a good idea or a bad idea. So he is now describing the three kinds of giving up. Verse 5. Yajnadana tapav karma natyajam karyameva tat yajñodanam tapaschaiva pavanani manishinam. Work in the form of sacrifice, gift, and austerity should not be relinquished, but should indeed be performed, for sacrifice, gift, and austerity are sanctifying to the wise. So first of all, Krishna points out that no matter what you do with other kinds of work, these three should never be given up, because these three, pavanani manishinam, that these three produce increased purity of heart. They are sanctifying. So that is what is the meaning of a pavanani in Sanskrit, that they increase the purity of the heart, and purity of the heart is essential for progress in spiritual life. So he said these three, worship, sacrifice or gifting, and austerity should never be given up. Verse 6. But even these three, Krishna will say, should be done or can be done or get done in three different ways. And you already know by this time what those three ways are. The discussion that was begun in the earlier chapter about things being done in a sattvic way, tamasic way, and rajasic way. Krishna points out here that even these three, even this yajna, dana, tapa, worship, gift, and austerity can be done in all of these three ways. And he'll describe them now, how those three things manifest. Verse 6. Etanyapitu karmani sangam tyaktva phalani cha kartavya niti me partha nishchitam matamuttamam. But even these activities should be performed giving up attachment and fruit. This is my decided and best view. So no matter what work we do in life, there are two things that Krishna says we need to give up. We must give up attachment and give up results. In other words, if I have to do something good in my life, whatever action I consider to be good, I have to ask myself, why do I want to do this good thing? And oftentimes, we will find that there is some motive. In fact, there is a saying in Sanskrit, prayojanam anuddishya mandopi na pravartate. That is, even a stupid person doesn't do anything unless there is some motive. So everything that we do in life, there is a motive. Sometimes we do things mechanically, but it's always good to just pause and ask ourselves, why am I doing it? In fact, as I often say, if we increase the why questioning of our thoughts, our words, and our actions, we will save a lot more time and energy in life. In other words, if I'm doing something and if I ask myself, why am I doing it? And if I don't get a good answer, it means I shouldn't be doing it. If I want to join a conversation, but before I open my mouth, I ask myself, what am I going to say and why am I saying it? And again, if I don't get a good answer, I shouldn't be saying it. A lot of our time and energy in the course of a day are wasted, not because of the things that we need to do, but because of the things that are totally useless, which help neither us nor anyone else. So if we can eliminate these kind of useless thoughts, useless words, and useless actions, but at the end of the day, we'll have a lot more time and energy at our disposal. And so this why questioning is good. And so attachment, what we will see is often every action that we do, we'll say, why am I doing it? And it's not as if we don't get an answer all the time. Oftentimes we'll say, well, I'm doing this action because I want this. So we are attached to the action, but more often also to the result of action. Now, why should I do it without attachment? Because it's this. There are factors in this life over which we have limited control. I mean, there are certain things over which I have full control. For instance, now, if I now decide to lift this, well, it's my decision and I can lift it. But if now the window is closed, but if some other window opens and suddenly a big breeze comes in and it's just thrown out of my hand, I don't have any control over it. So there are forces outside in this world over which we don't have any control. But there are certain things over which we have control. So every work that we do, we find that sometimes the work fails, we don't succeed in achieving whatever it is that we wanted to achieve, not because we lacked effort. Perhaps we have given our best shot. Perhaps we have done everything as perfectly as it was humanly possible, and yet it may not succeed. And it will make us miserable because, well, there was nothing more you could have done about it. On the other hand, things fail because there were other factors involved into the completion of that project over which I had no control. And so attachment to the work or attachment to the result opens up the possibility of a disappointment, possibility of pain, a possibility of sorrow. That's why Krishna says here, do all this work, do it without attachment and without seeking the result. Again, because the result is not in our hands. Two things to be kept in mind here. It is this, that once I determine the means to a goal, clearly if I want to do something, I have a certain reason why I'm doing it. So I determine this is what I want to achieve and this is the thing I should do. Once that is done, all that remains to be done is to focus on the work. I don't have to remain attached to the result, because if I do this well, the result will come. It's like you are, say, driving to some place where you have never been before. All that you need to do is to, well, now it's easy. There is a GPS. You just put the starting point and the destination. All that remains to be done later is just follow the route. That's it. Because once the route is decided, all that you need to do is to go on it, and then you will reach the destination. And therefore, being attached to the work itself or attached to the result doesn't help. And that's what Krishna means here. That do everything that you can. Can we do something that needs to be done just because it needs to be done, rather than because, oh, this will make me happy, or this will give me this, or this will give me that? Because what if it doesn't? But if I just do something good because, well, it's good to do good, the joy of doing good because it is good to do good, no one can take away from you. Over that you have full control. But whether the result itself, it may come, it may not come. We can hope that it will come, but it may not come. So that's what is meant by saying, don't be attached to, do the work without getting attachment to it and attachment to the result of the work. Verse 7. Niyatasya tu sanyasaha karmano nopapadyate mohat tasya parityagaha tamasav parikirtitaha. But the renunciation of obligatory work is not proper. Abandonment of such work from delusion is declared to be tamasic. Now, obligatory work means that at different stages in our lives, different kinds of duties come to us. And we know that. When we are little, when we are children, when we are at home, as a son or a daughter, there are certain duties we have. A duty of a son or a daughter toward his or her parents. Just like parents have their duties towards their children. When you go to a school, there are certain duties associated with that. How is a student expected to live and behave in a school? So you have to follow the rules of the school, whatever policies of that school are. Then as a citizen, and you grow up and you become active in public life, and there are certain social requirements. Follow the laws of the land. So at different stages, again, and whichever place you work in, workplace has its own rules. Then when you have your own family, you will have your own duties and responsibilities. Responsibilities towards family, towards your neighborhood, responsibilities towards your city, and so on. So carrying out all of our duties and responsibilities, which may change. It may change with place, it may change with work, it may change with age. We know that different kinds of duties come to us. Now, those are considered obligatory work. And doing that obligatory work without attachment, without seeking results, that is what purifies the heart. Now, abandonment of such work is like, well, why should I do it? Why do they have the speed limits? Why should I follow speed limit? Now, that kind of a thinking, why should I follow rules? That kind of thinking is considered tamasic. So abandoning what needs to be done simply through a deluded way of thinking, that's the tamasika way. When tamas is predominant in us, we'll tend to think that way. Verse 8. Dukkha-mityeva yat karma kaya klesha bhayat yajet sakritva rajasam tyagam naiva tyaga phalam labhet. If from fear of bodily trouble one relinquishes action because it is irksome, thus performing a rajasic relinquishment, one certainly does not obtain the fruit of relinquishment. So again, some people may give up work not because of some great renunciation that has come over them, not because of any great spiritual ideal motivating them, just because it's too much botheration, it's just too much work, I don't want all this trouble. So this way of avoiding work because it is troublesome or because it is something that you don't particularly enjoy doing, that kind of giving up is called a Rajasika way of giving up. And that giving up does not yield the benefits that come. So giving up itself is a wonderful thing. As I said in the beginning, that the name of this chapter is Sannyasa Yoga, a yoga of giving up. But why am I giving up? Am I giving up because I don't need to do it? Then that giving up will not give me any benefit. Am I giving up things because, oh, that's too much trouble, I hate that work, that's why I'm giving up? That doesn't give me any benefit. So neither the tamasic way of giving up or the rajasic way of giving up will give me the benefit of giving up. It's only the sattvic way of giving up that will bring me the benefit. And that's described in verses 9 and 10. Karyamityeva yat karma niyatam kriyate Arjuna sangam tyaktva phalam chaiva satyaga satviko mataha. When obligatory work is performed, O Arjuna, only because it ought to be done, giving up attachment for it and its fruit, that relinquishment is regarded as sattvika. As I said, if something that needs to be done, all that a sattvika person says, this needs to be done, let's do it. If any benefit is to come out of it, it will come on its own. Whether or not you are attached to it makes no difference. Whether or not you seek the results makes no difference. Just do it. One of our Vedanta students, I heard this story sometime, this happened long before, maybe even before I was born. I don't know, but it's a pretty old story. So Swami in Southern California, Swami Prabhuvananda, I heard that one student went to him, we have a center in Hollywood, so one student went to him and said, oh, this mantra that you have asked me to repeat, I have lots of questions that come to my mind and a lot of doubts come, and should I repeat it this way, should I repeat it that way? And that person kept on asking questions. The Swami just looked at that person and said, just do it. The idea is not that your question shouldn't be answered, not that we shouldn't get our doubts resolved. Of course, as much as possible, we should try to do it. But sometimes, if all that I do all my life is just keep on raising doubts, then I'll get nothing done. And the idea is, if I just do it, my doing this practice itself with faith, with sincerity, with perseverance, itself will remove many of these lingering doubts in the mind. And that's, I think, important for every spiritual seeker to remember, that while reading of books and consulting your teachers will definitely help in answering many of your questions and doubts, but they're never going to go away totally. They'll go away completely only through your own experience. And in order for you to get that experience, you have to do it. You have to. Otherwise, we can have weeks and weeks of workshops and retreats on prayer, how to pray, how many kinds of prayer there are, and so on. But none of this is going to help if I don't spend even one time, 1 minute praying. So we must learn, as spiritual seekers, we must learn to live with a few unanswered questions, unresolved doubts, somewhere in the corner of our heart. Try to get as many answers as possible, but recognize that a few unanswered questions, unresolved doubts will remain. Keep them. As we go through life, life itself will answer many of those questions. If I'm a true student of life, if I'm vigilant, if I'm alert, I will see that answers to my questions will come in most unexpected ways, from a most unexpected person and at a most unexpected time. So I have to be alert always. If I'm not alert, the answer may come and I may not even notice it. I may not even know it's come. And that's why practice is necessary. And that's what Krishna is saying here. Do something, do what is good, do what is necessary, do what is right, because it is good, because it is necessary. Just do it. It will yield the necessary result. Okay, I think we will stop here. There's one more verse which describes the sattva way of doing it, but we will do it next week. So if you have any doubts, questions, thoughts, ideas, feel free to express them. Yeah.
Swamiji, when you mentioned that there's many useless actions we do during the day, many of them become habits. So we are not truly rational. We continue to do these habits, though we know they may not be useful. How do we break these habits?
Well, as I said, be alert before, because the thing is, sometimes we say, oh, life has become so fast. And so we just kind of just rush all the time. It's good to slow down a little bit. And it doesn't take all that much. I mean, in the beginning, it might seem a bit cumbersome, like every little thing, which is, why am I doing it? Try to ask that question as often as you can. It's in the beginning, as I said, it might seem a kind of little too much to expect to do that. But once that becomes the way your mind functions, you'll find that it's not that difficult. You'll be always alert before, like, why am I saying it? Why am I doing it? And so it becomes then kind of a second nature. Habit is our second nature. So if you want to change habit, it's not easy, of course. I mean, cultivating a new habit is easier than changing an old habit. But again, it can be changed. It's not impossible. Yeah. Dear? Oh, you did that. Okay. Someone else? Yeah, there.
Swamiji, correct me if I'm wrong, that verse 8, you were saying Tamasikta, that how if you don't follow the rules, its rules are already there. So in order to achieve some higher goal, sometimes you have to swim against the current. So we are not following the rules.
No, it's not clear. Say that.
Sometimes in order to achieve some higher goal, you have to swim against the current. Like you have to not follow the rules.
No, give an example.
Like monks, they leave their home and they are seeing their parents are crying. So it's not that they enjoy that their parents are crying or the rule of the society, they are going against those. So how do you explain that this is not the Tamasikta that we are going against the...
Right. Yeah, so they're not really breaking a rule. I mean, there is another rule. I mean, the thing is this, there will be sometimes conflicting rules, and then you have to prioritize it. So for instance, now monks, now those who decide to be monks, now they say, oh, I'm going to leave the family and I'm just going to go in search of God. Now clearly, when they were a part of the family, they had certain duties and responsibilities towards the family. Now when they say, well, I'm not going to do it, your question is very good, question is right. So they are abandoning this work. But they're not really breaking the rule, because there's another one rule is like, which says, in fact, in one of the Upanishads, it is said, Yadahareva virajet, tadahareva pravrajet, which really means that as soon as the spirit of renunciation comes over you, all other rules fall away. You can just go in search of that. So if I abandon, if you like, or if I stop carrying out my duties and responsibilities towards the family or to my neighborhood because I have a higher duty towards God, that is permissible because that is actually another rule in the book. But if I stop carrying out my duties and responsibilities to the family because it's too much hassle, I don't want to do it, then that would be a problem. See, so it's like that. So yes, so there will be a prioritizing of the things. And then again, the question would be, well, who decides the priority? Now, for someone with a spiritual ideal, they will have some reference point to go to. And oftentimes, well, it will be usually either your teacher or a text like this. But some people say, well, I'm going to make my own rules. Which is okay. I mean, if you're just going to be by yourself in a forest all by yourself, you can make your own rules. But if you're going to be part of a community, either in a society or somewhere, then everybody can't say, I'm just going to live by my own rules. So that's the kind of a compromise that occurs. Yeah. Anyone else?
Hi, namaste, Swamiji. Thank you for the lecture. I actually had a comment about the last lecture that we had, which covered the importance of one mantra, which is Om Tat Sat. So I wanted to point out that there's actually an important mantra that comes in many rituals like Sandhya, Vandanam, etc., which you're supposed to do in the morning every day if you're a priest, basically. But that mantra is called Gayatri Japam, and you can practice it, say, 108 times. But that Om Tat Sat is roughly contained within that full Gayatri mantra Japam. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that. But just to demonstrate the power of that Om Tat Sat, like one example would be, I guess the thing is that your spirit may break at certain times, but I think the great wisdom that the sages of the past and the present have given us is that there are also tools which can actively build the spirit too. So one tool would be when your spirit is about to break or when it's already broken, would be to close your eyes, take a deep breath, and say out loud, Om Tat Sat.
Well, if it helps you, go ahead.
Yeah. but basically I guess in the context of the power of that mantra, those three words by themselves, could you comment on that in the context of the full mantra?
Well, I mean, clearly, Om Tat Sat is not a substitute for Gayatri. So it's not like, oh, Gayatri is a very long mantra, so this is kind of a short, again, it's not a substitute. But if it helps you somehow remain focused on your spiritual ideal, if it helps you, ultimately, if it helps you become a better human being than you are, if it helps you go closer to your spiritual ideal, whatever works, that's fine. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, so we will stop here today. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. So next Wednesday will be the last Gita class for this year, because then we have Christmas coming, and then we have the winter recess in January. So we'll continue with the Gita study next Wednesday at 7:30. and do a few more verses of chapter 18. On Sunday, we celebrate the birthday of our Holy Mother Sharda Devi. So instead of 11 o'clock, we'll have a special worship here at 10:30 in the morning. And as we always do, there'll be a lot of music, there'll be prayer, meditation, worship, and flower offering, and then prasad. So all of you are welcome at Sunday at 10:30. And because of the puja on Sunday, on Saturday we will not have the evening meditation to get the place ready. But next Tuesday, we'll have Arati as usual. So let's now do the prayer on page 3. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.